today, for example, a person like Clarence Sharp, as a speaker, has meant more to me in use of words in relation to hunger or to relation to people on the farms. I mean, he's a user of, he's a poet. I think he is the poet that I wouldn't follow Robert Penn Warren or these great poets, Lowry and all these great middle-class poets speak nothing but their own anguish or their own private. But I think the orators, Debs was a great poet. Debs and Bill Haywood was a great poet. The IWW street speakers I used to listen to, they were poets because they were speaking out of their hunger, out of their anguish, out of their beliefs, and their words were their sentences, their structure, their oratory to me was poetry.
We have another question.
Can you hear me? I'd like to make a couple comments, and then if either of the panel members or anyone else would like to respond to these, I would really appreciate hearing it. Larry Remley yesterday...
Can you talk louder?
Okay. Larry Remley yesterday pointed out the importance of symbols in the developing the success of the nonpartisan league. And we've heard poets this morning dealing with social action and social protest. And there's no question, I feel, about their effectiveness, at least in cohering our minds and creating enthusiasm to guide us and impel us toward action. I guess I don't really question that. I think there's another way in which art is proving helpful too. As we become more and more aware of the division within our brains, right and left lobe action and activities, we become aware of the fact that America is trapped more or less in what they would call the left brain. That is, it's linear, masculine, competitive, aggressive in many ways to the people within it and to the land upon which we live. Art is right brain culture, right brain thinking, and moves us into imagistic thinking, circular thinking, connectedness with environment and other people, feeling, and in general holistic thinking, feminine thinking possibly in the psychological sense. It would seem to me then that art for its own sake even is politically revolutionary. Whether or not it focuses upon issues or not. A final thought in terms of this then is that in our new austerity budget that's apparently going to be dealt with soon in the congressional level, they're talking about cutting the National Endowment for the Arts and the Humanities quite drastically. It's being considered in any case. And though the sort of thing that Don West has mentioned, there's a lot of poetry being written for poets and being supported by these endowments. On the other hand, these endowments also have developed things like the Foxfire Project and a lot of oral history being collected. They put poets in terminal cancer wards and in small towns out on the prairies and in ghetto schools, etc. And we should probably think very strongly now about cutting these endowments since, in fact, their total economic value wouldn't be a good down payment on a destroyer.
What is your question?
I guess I would like any kind of comments that relate to these things, Meridell or James.
Well, I don't know anything to add to that. I really think that the endowments, if they had something like the old WPA, is what they ought to have. You know, but that was a democratic thing. The only thing a writer has to do to get on the WPA was to be hungry, and you got on. And it was not elitist in its intention or in its organization, I think. But you did, and painters too. That would be a really democratic way to help culture. But I don't think that's going to be.
I didn't quite understand the brain theory that the gentleman was referring to, but I'd surely like to think America was caught in the left side of its brain. I don't see any evidence that we're caught on the left side of our brain.
What did he say?
The left side of our brain.
Oh, well, I don't go with that left and right side business in the brain. Seems to me that's a linear male concept. It doesn't apply to me anyway. My creativeness comes from the womb, I think, which is single. You have only one. But I don't. It seems to be a very popular idea. It seems to be just another way to split things in two parts.
Well, I think we ought to understand that art of any kind is a luxury.
A luxury?
When this country was being formed, pioneers had very little time for art because they were so busy earning a living, cutting down the trees, fighting the Indians. So in order for any of us to paint or compose music or write poems or novels, there has to be enough leisure time to do this. And we have to be accommodated to this by somebody else furnishing enough food for more than themselves in order for art to survive. The older we get as a country, the better I think our art becomes. We have
And
more
who
sympathy.
will it survive for in that case? I mean, you know, who will it be for if the people are not going to?
There's always only a limited audience for art.
There is?
Sure.
But who are they? I'm particular about my audience.
Well, but a symphony concert.
I think that pioneers had poetry. You read the early pioneer magazines, and you'll find Tom Paine on the front page. You'll find Geisha, Heine. You'll find their own. There's a great tradition of farm poetry. If you go to the historical library, you'll see whole books published privately by farmers. The newspaper ran all week, and you could use the press the rest of the time and publish your own exusions.
After you've worked 14 hours in a day, you don't sit down and write poetry.
Well, that's true, but that's a poem also.
And the man raised the point about this being an aggressive male society. Reminds me of the story of the elderly couple who was sitting around after dinner, and the man said to his wife, if I predecease you, would you marry again? And she said, well, probably, yes, I wouldn't want to be alone. And he said, would you use the same house? And she said, yes, I think I would. Would you use the same furniture? And she said, well, yes, I'm used to it. She said, would you let your new husband use my golf clubs? And he said, oh, no, he's left-handed.
I think one of the great cultures that related to workers is the Yiddish culture, where workers, the garment workers' Yiddish culture is a tremendous culture of workers who work 16 hours a day and wrote Yiddish poetry, and it's a whole culture based upon the anguish of the 16-hour day in the garment industry.
I've been told that people who are waiting to serve us lunch are beginning to be upset and that we are going to have to stop. This upsets me quite a lot. And it's possible that if some of you are interested in continuing the discussion, maybe we can secure a room somewhere later this afternoon or perhaps tomorrow. And if such an arrangement is made, I trust it will be announced from the microphone. I'm sorry to cut you off that have questions. Thank you very much.